We're going to put our new colorizer into our old app. This is some of our modules and what order they get imported in. You can see this one, Treebard root. This is up to 036 right now. This is at the bottom. Nothing can be imported from here to anywhere. It all goes this direction. So we've got all these modules that contribute to the ultimate performance of Treebard. And this is the file that you will someday double click to start Treebard. Right now you still have to run it as a Python file instead of an exe, but we're going to do something about that pretty soon. First we're going to put the new colorizer in the old app. So let's take a quick peek at that colorizer again just for the fun of it. You see this is taken like 3.5 seconds, 3.25 seconds, and you saw some flashing there. Let's do it over. This is the Treebard app itself. There are no trees open. Count the seconds. I think it's going to take 3.25 seconds to start, and you'll see some flashing as the widgets form. That might have been more than 3.25 seconds. If you go over to here, colors, then you can change the color scheme to whatever you want. You can make a new color scheme, etc. And this is also going to take 3.25 seconds. Let's put it back to something I can stand to look at. I like dark. The goal in rewriting the colorizer was to get rid of that flashing and that 3-second wait. I'd like to wait less than 1 second and see almost no flashing. It's Python, so it's going to be slow, but it doesn't have to be real inefficient, and we want to change that. I wrote some new code. You watch me do it over here in the model, and we're going to put that code into here. Previously, over here in widgets, when we import widgets, we import something called config.all that runs all the color configuration for everything, because all the widgets have to be colorized every time you redraw, and you redraw every time you colorize. Okay, so this is a function that has to run to colorize everything. Maybe it's changed colors now. But if you open up widgets, now you see we've got some 30 odd, I don't know how odd they are, but probably a little bit odd, modules in Treebard. Those are all Python, and some databases, 2 databases. One is in common with all trees, and then for each tree has its own database. But if you open up widgets.py, then we go config.all here. There's config.all. Called this in each top level window. See, now maybe I have to do something. Maybe I created a replacement for config.all without really trying to. Since I didn't look at my old code, I just like to rewrite stuff from scratch, so I might happen upon some random improvement without trying, because the harder I try, then the more I'm going to be looking in old code and copying old mistakes, which I don't want to do. So what's everybody? There you go. There's descendants. That's what I'm looking for. Where's descendants being used? Get all descendants. And that gets all the widgets in the app. That's going to be everybody. So for all widgets and everybody is all the widgets, then you're going to do all this. Okay, so basically this is similar to what we did. Hopefully not identical, but it's similar. I know it's not identical. Let's take a quick peek at both things and see. We got all widgets and descendants. Here we got get all descendants, you see. Here we got get all descendants, and then we end up with this list. So for widge in that list, then we're going to do this. How identical is it? Because if it's exact, then there's nothing to do. I've been fooling myself, you see. So for widget in descendants, we get a subclass. Oh, here we're getting a class first, and then we're getting a subclass. I don't know why that was done. It seems like an extra step. Now this, if you find your subclass, you're running a function. So far, it appears that this is doing something very similar, but in a more roundabout way, and possibly with an extra step, because we're not using Winfo class in the new one. Maybe we're going to find out we needed to. Let's just dive in there, and once we get in, about knee deep, we'll probably figure out what we should have sat down and thought about before we dove in. But that's how I do things, because number one for me is, am I having fun? If I sit around planning for 3 days, I'll just go to sleep. I won't be having fun. So I need to be having fun. So that's how I do stuff. Let's get started. I also wanted to mention one more time that for every widget, we have to have a style, which is an attribute of that widget's class, which is added to the class from outside the class, which seems like probably a bad idea, and I've never liked doing it, and I don't know that I even had to do it. I don't remember exactly. This some time ago that I wrote this thing, but if you look in any module that makes widgets, you see, these are both widgets there, but they both happen to be scroll bars, a vertical and horizontal scroll bar. For each of these widgets, you have to declare a style, okay? And we did not do that in our model. So I think that's the best part. I think that's the biggest improvement. And other than that, I haven't analyzed it too much because I'm not smart enough to. So just go ahead and do it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep everything. We're not going to change any of the code in widgets. We're going to add new code at the very bottom. So you just go Control-N to get to the workspace where we're actually working. In the model, this is a dialog that opens up. Here we don't have a dialog, we have a tab. In the Colors tab of the Preferences tab, Preferences, Colors. Let's look at this. I would never stoop so low as to be fashionable. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. It would be fashionable to let Windows handle this problem, because then people could just go into their Windows and change their color scheme and every app they have would look the same. No comment. So here in the real app, we've got a tab. We don't have a dialog. But here in the model, we had a dialog. So basically, none of this is going to be used. Probably don't even have to look at it. Down here, we might want to take a quick peek at this and see if it's the same or similar in our root module. The important part is the rest of it. Get all descendants is the same. I never changed that. This is all autofill stuff. The cell autofill. These are just widgets that we made. These are widget classes. We're going to have to make a lot of widget classes, but I'll do that on my own time. You aren't going to have to watch me. I'll just do a few more examples. So none of this is important to what we're doing. This is the color scheme. It's the relevant options for this class. And BG, FG, and font are therefore going to be the options that are listed in here. BG, FG, and font, and styles. This is the important stuff right here and right here. So let's just copy this and we'll put it right here. Now, get all descendants is the one that finds every widget. What was this one? Oh, that's in config all. Just called inside of config all. So we'll go Control-N down to the bottom where we're working. Yes, same thing here. I'm just going to start with what we have here and go from there. Then we could just do this. One complication that we're going to have to deal with is that I showed you what Treebard is, right? This is Treebard. This is Treebard's generic color scheme. This is Treebard's color scheme. You can't change that, but for each tree, you can change its color scheme separately. So if I was to open up a different tree, let's open up this tree, counting the 3 seconds now, watching things flash. This is the BB Brits family tree, and now let's just make this something different. All right, now you see there are 2 trees open, BB Brits and sample tree. They're 2 different color schemes and they don't interfere with each other at all. Treebard itself is using this app-wide generic color scheme. So that's the first thing I see that's going to be a slight complication over what we've already been doing, because in the model we've got something called treebard.formats, and that's something that would be replaced by familytree.formats, and that would be different for each of these 2 trees. Formats is a dictionary that uses a color scheme ID stored in that tree's database. So this tree is storing this an ID for this color scheme. This tree is storing an ID for this color scheme, neither of which is treebard.formats. More likely, self.familytree.formats. Family tree is the dialog itself that's used for this tree's main, this window, the big window. So over here in the root module, we could trace the code a little bit. This is the first thing that runs. So if you're talking about tracing code, this is where you start on the root module. This is where we instantiate the TK class. That is the application itself, capital TK. So Treebard refers to the application, therefore it refers to this window right here. The application is a top-level window. These trees are also top-level windows, but they can't exist without this one. Then you can open as many trees as you want. This is one thing. We're just going to delete every one of these lines. That's going to be hundreds of lines of code that we will delete, that will no longer have to be read and responded to while opening Treebard or changing colors. So that's good. And in exchange for that, we're going to write hundreds of lines of code creating all these custom widgets, which is fine. I did it that way for years, and it works great. There's nothing wrong with it. There's Treebard formats. I thought we had something called Treebard formats, and we do. Okay, so Treebard.formats is going to be used in some places. Well, Treebard.formats is the formats dictionary for the Treebard app. I showed you that main dialog. This I've been using in pretty much similar form for years. It's over here in widgets. So basically this is going to get you the formats for a specific tree. If you happen to have the colors type ID that is correct for that tree, and if not, it's going to have you using the default formats. Also over here we use get tree formats and get tree formats right here. And then it returns formats, a dictionary. And we can call it treebard.formats. We can call it self.familytree.formats. We can call it whatever we want. So when we open up a particular tree, we're going to be looking at top page. This is the person tab on the main dialog. This down here is the events table. There's only one line there right now, also called the conclusions table. That's blinding me. There you go. Change to person number 1. That is the events table. This is the families table. That's where we change the color scheme. We have an events table.py module. We have a families.py module. But the one that runs both of those, as well as, others, such as gallery and do list, the one that runs all those is called main.py. So let's take a peek at main.py. See, this is everywhere. I think the thing to do to save time here, make it this simple and nice, is we go in here and we're going to change the old config all to something else carefully so that it can be easily brought back if we want to. And then we go down here. We'll change this one the same way. We're going to change this to config all. But you see, the old config all has the dialog and the formats dictionary. And that makes sense because we're going to need the right formats dictionary. The dialog would be root generally, but if you're opening another dialog when the app's already open, then you're going to need to say the name of the dialog you're opening so that one can be formatted when you open it. So this is going to be needed. Control End. This is going to be the dialog and the formats. So instead of treebard.formats on everything, we're going to pass formats. So we pass the right one. Okay, and we just made some progress. Now we're getting somewhere. And we're going to do the same thing here. Get rid of Treebard here and pass formats into this. Now this is going to run already. We've already made it possible for this to run. However, it's broken. I mean, it's going to have all kinds of errors. We haven't done enough. We've only just started, only just begun, just like the song says. Let's go ahead and run the app and see what the first error is, because sometimes I do error-driven programming because I'm not a programmer and I don't know any better. This is not supposed to be green, but we'll figure out all these little knickknacks and doodads somewhere along the way. This sample tree is what I want to work with. It's normal because we're in the middle of something here. This is not a color scheme. This is a nothing right now. This is where I stopped, you see. This is where I stopped and said, well, I can't fix this code in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable effort, so I'm going to write it over. Because if it's not easy to fix, that means it's not written very well to begin with. And then the best way to write it over is to rewrite this table, because I want to anyway. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a whole lot of widget classes. Over here in widgets, there's a big dictionary. You can find it by looking like this because it's so big, it's easy to find. We're going to make a different big dictionary, maybe not quite this big, hopefully. There it is, called styles too. See, now here I gave this style a name instead of there being a tuple to look in. And I think that's an extra step. It's an extra name to maintain, and then you have to reference this name in a place I showed you. Every widget has to say style equals. That's not good. We don't want to do that. So we need to look through this list. We need to create a class called label status bar, a class called label highlighted. We need to create all these classes again based on what's in here. And I could just go to an old version and copy all that code and make changes to it if necessary. So I'll show you an old version. You see I've got all these backups. There you go. Okay, like that. See, these attributes aren't even created in the class. I don't like that. I never liked that, but it worked, so I just kept doing it. And I think it's having to go to every single widget and discover what its style attribute is. And I think that's why it's taken over 3 seconds to start the app, and you got to go flashy, flash, flash, flash while all the widgets are created in front of you instead of having it just happen poof like that. This is what I want to look at. I want to look at the old way of doing it. I want to see if I can just get all those classes back in widgets. We had a button, a frame. Looks like most of this stuff's going to be in widgets. I don't want this widget. This is current. I want the old one from here, like this. April 30th. Edit with Notepad, and definitely set it to read only so I know which is which. That lock shows you can't type into it. See, there's button, all this different stuff. Let's get our widgets out of here. These are simple widgets that don't change color when you point at them and stuff. Oh, that's going to save us a lot of typing. Look at that. We're going to do a lot of deleting. We're not going to have this anymore. That no longer exists. Every one of these had a function that had to run. In order to create that option, I think I was just playing when I invented this, and then by the time I got done playing with it, I was tired of it, and I didn't want to replace it any more times because I replaced the colorizer several times in a row, and I really liked the last one. I thought it was going to be the best ever, but it was the least efficient one ever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all this code, all these widgets, Control C, and then take it over here and put it at the very bottom. Okay, and then we're going to go through and get rid of this function in every single one of those, and also this. So we're going to delete this out of every single one, like that. But the general idea is that you're going to inherit from the TK, from the Tkinter widget, create your own widget, usually by the same name. You're going to give it all the permanent features that you want it to have. Those are options that exist for button. And then for the options the user can change, like background, foreground, font, any of these colors, and fonts are changeable. So what we're going to do is get rid of that and just put it back in the normal way instead of doing this. Instead of running a function, we're just going to have it in there. Just put it in there, just like that. And I'm going to do that with all of these classes that I just pasted into here. I'm just going to do every one just like that. And then it'll be probably exactly the way that we were working in the model. Also, get rid of that because I no longer have the method, so I don't want to call it either. We're going to get rid of these 3 lines, boom, 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 just like that. Delete, delete, delete. You've got self.formats that you passed into this class. This class is main. You passed formats into this class. Then you made it self-formats in reference to main. Where you called main from would be opening. There it is. Okay, self.formats. The family tree class is a dialog. The main dialog of each family tree is an instance of family tree class. And then here in the family tree class, you're going to run make formats dict, go to the database and find out what setting you're using for a colors type ID and create a self.formats dictionary based on that. So inside of family tree class, you're going to instantiate the main class, and that's where you're going to pass self.formats, and that self.formats is going to be passed on as a parameter to all kinds of different stuff that is created inside of this main. Main is just a frame inside of the family tree dialog, but it's a very big class. So it passes lots of important stuff along. And the question was, are we going to be wanting to pass formats to every single widget class? What I'm hoping to do is to run make format dict globally on load or inside of config alt and then run it again in the colorizer so that when the user chooses a different color scheme for a specific family tree, then that tree will recolorize. I'm going to eliminate this line and hope it's not needed because I don't want to pass that dictionary to every single widget class. I don't think that's a good idea. So, in other words, this will go in here. And hope that's all that's needed. Keep things real simple. So, see you next time.